Hello everyone, my name is 𝗟𝗯ance and I'd like to welcome you back to the streaming channel of Aksioma Institute for Contemporary Art Ljubljana. Exactly 1 year ago, in November 2019, we started a one-year program of events entitled Hyperemployment, Post-Work, Online Labor and Automation, co-curated by the contemporary art critic Domenico 𝗟𝗯ance and myself. Hyperemployment is a word borrowed from the media theorist Jan Bogost that describes the exhausting work of the technology user. In fact, today, no matter if we are unemployed, self-employed, or working at a regular full-time job, as technology users, we are always working. Now, 1 year later, and after numerous activities including a group exhibition, a symposium, several solo exhibitions, and a couple of new productions, we are ready to wrap up the program with the publication of a reader featuring words by Domenico 𝗟𝗯ance, Luciana Parisi, Silvio Lorusso, a conversation between Media Group and Beatnik and Felix Stalder, and works by the Beatniks, Danilo Correale, Elisa 𝗟𝗓𝗢𝗂𝗂, Sanela Jahic, Silvio Lorusso, Jonas Lund, Michael Mandiberg, Eva and Franco Mattes, Anna Riedler, Sebastian Schmieg, Sasha Sedlacek, and Guido Segni. The book is a co-publishing initiative between Aksioma and Nero Editions and will be available on this website very soon. So if you're interested in algorithmic sovereignty, artificial intelligence, automation, data extraction, exploitation, free labor, free time, gig working, crowdfunding, human-in-the-loop, logistics, machine vision, micro-labor, outsourcing, peripheral work, platform economy, post-capitalism, post-work, procrastination, quantification, self-improvement, time management, unemployment, and social media fatigue, bookmark this address and set a reminder. Today's streaming event, entitled Laborious Relations, is a conversation between two of the artists featured in these publications, Silvio Lorusso and Sebastian Schmieg. Silvio will take the cue from the essay entitled Gig Economy, Art and its Dark Matter, which is about to be published in The Reader, while Sebastian will tell us more about the idea of laborious intelligence, expressed in the essay he recently published for Kulturtekniken 4.0 on the Goethe Institute website. Silvio Lorusso is a writer, artist, and designer living in Rotterdam. His work focuses on the cultures and rhetorical regimes embedded in techno-social systems. He deals with the narratives and counter-narratives that define platforms, devices, and interfaces. By doing so, he engages with the tensions surrounding notions of labor, productivity, autonomy, self-design, entrepreneurialism, precarity, and failure. In 2018, he published his first book entitled 𝗟𝗓𝗢𝗔𝗕, Everyone is an Entrepreneur, Nobody is Safe. Sebastian Schmieg is an artist living and working in Berlin and Dresden. His work engages with the algorithmic circulation of images, text, and bodies within the context that blur the boundaries between human and software, individual and crowd, and labor and leisure. At the center of his practices are playful interventions into found systems that explore hidden and often absurd aspects behind the glossy interface of our network society. At the minutes, the two of them are presenting their collaborative project Platform Ghosting as part of Dopo Lavoro flagship of the Rijeka 2020 European Capital of Culture project, whose coordinator is the moderator of today's streaming session, the director of the Rijeka-based cultural association Drugo More, Davor Mišković. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you to use the web chat on our website to share with us comments, links, thoughts, and questions during the debate. At the end of the session, we'll make sure that some of them comes to our guests on your behalf. Silvio, Sebastian, Davor, thanks for accepting my invitation. I leave you the mic.
Ciao Silvio, ciao Sebastian, hi.
Ciao, Davor.
Hey,
Oh,
thanks for having us.
yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for, and thank you, Yanis, for presenting us so well. Well, I will just at the beginning explain how it will work. We will talk about 45 minutes and then we will receive the questions from the chat and you will try to answer them. And I will, for the start, ask you something very general. Let's say, kind of, Yanis already explained that the basics, kind of base for our conversation today, your latest installation platform Ghosts, and you and two of your texts, Gig Economy, Art and Its Dark Matter, written by Silvio, and your Sebastian essay, Is It Time We Call It Laborious Intelligence? So for the start, I would say that you, in your texts and artistic works, are dealing very much with power dynamics in work and employment relations. So we are obviously kind of observing the process, how the work and the employment relations are changing and developing in a way. And what is a really important question, what is the role of digital technology in this process and how it's shaping work and employment relations? How do you see this process? I mean, it's for both of you.
Shall I maybe start, Sebastian, or do you want to go first?
No, it's fine. Yeah. Go ahead.
Of course. It's maybe, of course, it's a very broad question, which I will try maybe to reconnect to the text, and I guess this can help us, both me and Sebastian, to have like a more specific answer to the question. So the impact of digital technology in relationship to, let's say, to art production and to work and art production specifically. I mean, that's more or less what I try to address in my text. Which was a bit, let's say, a critical rethinking of my own practice, the practice with Sebastian, and in general, we can say a certain current in media art that has to do with trying to make labor visible, reflect on labor, demystify the hidden aspect of labor, and maybe to quickly give an historical comparison point, I can shortly tell like the anecdote that inspired my text, which has to do with Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, which was designer, artist, and professor at Bauhaus. Who in the 20s sort of claimed to have ordered some paintings via the telephone, giving instruction to the worker using this medium. And this for me was somehow like a good comparison point to what we have today in art production in general, not necessarily in the art production that deals with labor, in the fact that there is a sort of managerialization of the role of the artist, in which the social aspect and the instructional role of the artist comes to the fore. That's why the artist becomes more and more on many levels some sort of art director. So that's like the terms that I mobilize, like from one side, the, let's say, romantic idea of the artist as like lonely person in their studio with the unalienated labor of doing painting. On the other side, the more, let's say, distinct relationship of the artist as an art director that socializes also with other workforces and instructed them and supervised them. So that also goes back into the work itself in many of the artworks that we do, and many of our fellow artists have tried to develop. So I guess for now I can give a bit of framework around this question. So I maybe leave the word to Sebastian.
Yeah, maybe I can connect to this thing of like hiring somebody via phone. So what I've worked around and written a text about recent, or like over the last couple of years, was this concept of humans as software extensions, which, like, if you look at it historically, we're all familiar with bodies and workers extending machines in the factory. But I would say, like, in the development of this, what we have now seen over the last couple of years and these days also is that like people, workers, bodies extend algorithmic systems, and that this is done through platforms. It's mediated through platforms. So you can hire somebody on a platform with a click. You can use them as a software extension as you would install something in your browser that you're looking at right now. And once you don't need that like thinking unit, body, person anymore, you can just fire that person with a click again. And I think that is a big change also in the sense that this role of managing or being managed is now really something that concerns everybody. So when I order a pizza, I'm becoming like this manager of this bicyclist, which I can, at least when I order it, I can watch it on my computer screen. I can see, okay, the guy or so is at this corner and he'll be here or she'll be here in 2 minutes. And I have to like track the person like a proper manager in a way. And yeah, this is, I would say, this is what I can add to the development question.
Yeah, Sebastian, you were referring to the artificial intelligence as laborious intelligence, and you just mentioned that that we can see the workers as a human software extensions. I mean, workers in these platforms. How did you come to these terms? I mean, can you elaborate? I mean, what meaning do they have for you? I mean, especially laborious intelligence, it's a quite, I would say, interesting term.
Yeah. So with the humans as software extensions, I would say it's quite a broad thing that can apply to people doing whatever kind of thing that you can mediate through a platform or through a computer network, which is really at the core of this. Everybody being available all the time, being addressable and then programmable through these platforms. And what I've worked on over the last couple of years is also like this whole topic of artificial intelligence. But what I was sucked into really from the beginning was this aspect of labor, which to me seemed really like the core issue of this. And so with laborious intelligence, for me, the idea is to look beyond this like promise of this intelligence explosion and look into the core of artificial intelligence, which I think is humans as software extensions, so people working somewhere in the world, creating data sets, building data sets, remotely controlling some machine that pretends to be like algorithmically controlled. And so here the focus of AI maybe more shifts to like management, and people are at the core of it and not so much the algorithms. And so for me, the idea is to really like, give some credit and shine some light to the people who are working on this. And if I may elaborate a bit more, but you can stop me when I'm going on for too long.
Yeah, please.
For me, I think the core of all this is that like it's a linguistic thing, like a term we use in AI. We say we train neural networks, and I think this training is at the core because we train people, algorithms, and everything for competition. So you have like workers in competition on the platforms, companies in competition for the best AI, and companies in competition like for the race for AI, which funds a lot of what we as artists and spaces and so do in recent years, I would say. And yeah. So the idea is really to look at what are the working conditions like this competition. What does it do with the whole system of artificial intelligence?
It seems that the adversarial network gains another term, gains another meaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Silvio, you just mentioned that kind of in such environment of gig economy or platform capitalism, however we call it, that there is this specific transformation for the artist, shift from the artist to art directors. In a sense, that is kind of something that maybe we can observe already earlier, as you mentioned, is 𝗟𝗯𝗍𝗂𝗓𝗔𝗧𝗔 process with giving instructions earlier, I mean in 20s, whenever it happened. But what this shift means today, I mean, in a kind of, how to say, global division of labor in the art field, in the art world.
I mean, the way I put it in the text is to, let's say, to say that what we experience today as artists in the world of art and art production is a form of, it's a sort of 𝗟𝗯𝗍𝗂𝗓𝗔 on steroids somehow, because you have two features which I think are quite crucial to understand this system of production nowadays, and this, let's say, mechanism of delegation. One are the platforms that Sebastian just mentioned, like the online marketplaces, which somehow democratized the process of asking other people to do any kind of work with you, which is reflected in many works present at Hyperemployment. Another aspect which I think is quite crucial is has to do with remote manufacturing, the ability to have a just-in-time production for any kind of typical medium of art production, like paintings, sculpture, and so on and so forth. If we were to highlight like a fundamental shift between the 𝗟𝗯𝗍𝗂𝗓𝗔𝗧 period and the current one, I would say that the attempt of nudges was somehow, I mean, we have to it's important to make a little parenthesis. The story, this anecdote is to a certain extent partially fiction. I mean, we don't know to what extent he actually called the company and gave instruction. So the question is, why would you create this this narrative around it? And it totally made sense at the time, because sort of the ideology of the Bauhaus was hand in hand with mass production, and mass production would shift the design phase to the execution phase. So you had designers and makers, which would split the two souls of craft people, so to say. Nowadays, in art production, we still see this distance, or like giving instruction to others, but the workforce, and this is more of an aesthetic kind of aspect of the work, is coming to the fore. It's not so much there is not so much this attempt to take it out of the picture. And another important thing that I try to consider in the essay is the fact that I mean, there is a sort of narrative around the way, like, the system of curation and criticism understand this kind of works, which has to do with somehow notions that you might call it get from activist discourse. So labor-oriented art is meant to subvert, to make things visible, to shed light. You know, we use all this kind of terminology, and I wonder to what extent this can be can be seen in a total light. What I mean is that the economy of producing artwork contributes to it. So it's not like it doesn't look at the phenomenon from the outside. It's part of this system of production. So the question that I pose is like, to what extent bringing this workforce within the artwork, in the frame of the piece, say a video or whatever, sheds actual light on labor as a relationship. And therefore, I advance the idea that somehow the piece, the art piece, the artwork is to a certain extent an engine for distinction, for creating this distinction between the artist and the art director, between the art director and the art worker. So it's a sort of apparatus of shaping those roles, of course, with all the ritual of of the exhibition, the festival, and so on and so forth. So I look a bit at the shortcomings of this type of art, without denying that it has its own value, which is wonderfully described by the essay in the same reader by Domenico 𝗟𝗯ance. So it's a sort of the dark side of that essay in a way.
Can I add a little thing, if you don't mind, Silvio?
Of course.
It might seem super basic, but I feel like those who are not so familiar with the whole discourse, maybe it helps to give a little basic explanation in the beginning. So when we talk about this, like platform-mediated labor or artificial/laborious intelligence, a lot of it is about making the workers invisible and having a shiny interface where it doesn't really matter what or who is behind, as long as it gets done really quickly. And so there is like many, like these attempts of making visible what is behind that shiny surface, which one attempt is to really just show the people with their face or whatever, so that you get an idea who or what is behind it.
Perfect. Thanks for this contextualization. Yeah. I have a feeling that Davor
looks frozen. Okay.
Okay.
But I can.
We were interrupted. Yeah, we were. Yeah.
What to do? I can ask a question. So I think we both have used the term of management now quite regularly in this conversation so far. And if I remember correctly, your essay starts with a quote on management. And I was wondering at what point you think the relationship between artists and whoever executes or produces something becomes like a relationship of management, or when it's more of a collaboration, or when it's just like a service. Like, for example, I have helped with art production for other artists, being paid for it. You maybe as well, I don't know. And when is it management or managerial, the relationship? And yeah, what is the difference maybe?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is a wonderful question, because we have a bit of like certain issues of vocabulary in the art world itself. And you can confirm that also the, let's say, the advertisement rhetoric around the platform has too often to do with collaboration. So collaboration is often a term to hide imbalances of power. So I would say that often management has this quality of a certain imbalance of power, which doesn't mean that is necessarily an exploitative relationship. But as we want, to be transparent about how labor and work, let's say, appear and what they are in their substance, we want to be also open about this kind of imbalance. And I think this helps to look again at the art world, in which very often these relationships are left informal, are not defined formally. So you find out at the very end that maybe what you thought was a collaboration was a sort of execution for an artist, and vice versa. So of course, the boundaries, the threshold is very thin, but it's very important to define, I think, a vocabulary of separation between these things. And I think, like, the words are, as you say, collaboration, management that puts the emphasis on supervision and on, like, keeping an eye on the work, but also other things like delegation. So I ask you to do something for me. And even outsourcing, which maybe, if we want to emphasize even another aspect here, has to do with really getting rid of the work. So maybe I can ask you back, how do you see this this lexicon? Does it do you find it useful? Is something that you use in your I don't know, even activity as an educator?
Yes, I think for sure it's useful, and yeah, I think we both use it in education to talk about the different roles in our situation, about the roles that designers or designers becoming what they can take. But I think one also has to be careful with it being too normative. Like, let's say, like one is the way it should be, collaboration, and everybody has an equal role, gets an equal share of attention. Because what I also, I think, appreciate of all this, let's say, humans as software extensions, where you are, like, you appear to be an algorithm, is that you can really like detach from work. This is something which, from myself, I also really appreciated when doing freelance computer programming. I could just sit at home, do that thing. I didn't have to interact with any client, and it was pretty much something I could just kind of detach from. So I think there's also like this something we might not expect, but there is something which is also a chance for those doing the kind of work which we ourselves have done, like producing for others, working for others. And I mean, we have been like trying to navigate this question in our practice as well, like several of these questions. But if we talk about the platform Ghost installation in Rijeka, it is our piece together with 𝗟𝗯𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗁. But of course, there is many people involved. So the installation is there, or was there, running and everything. It's big. I think it's the biggest installation we ever built, but we weren't there. We didn't even touch it. So basically we created, we pretty much set up a plan and then had people who were much better, luckily, as we are at building it, setting it up and putting it into motion. Even though I think we invested still quite some time and work into it. So this, I would say, is as a disclosure that we are too like trying to navigate this question.
Yeah, maybe I mean I think the case of this last work that we did together gives us a chance somehow to see how an emergency situation, which was the COVID one, because we were supposed to be there and help out with the building, with the setup. Of course, we wouldn't have done everything ourselves. It's never like that. We would have needed the help of other people. But to what extent, I think like the emergency situation brought, let's say, the management aspect, even the surveillance aspect, if we want to use a very charged word, to the fore. Because the easiest setup possible way to collaborate and to look at the setup is to have a camera there, CCTV style, and actually look at what people are doing in the space and have like the most panoptical almost vision of the setup. So that was very striking for me, like to have that sort of setup, this workstation on our side, you from your home, me from here, and to see this empty space building, emerging with someone listening to our instruction, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the piece, we also the material that we show all.
Hi.
Yeah, we're just.
I was ghosted.
So, yeah, you were ghosted.
Yeah. We were speaking about platform Ghost.
Yeah, brilliant. Please, Sebastian, don't be interrupted.
I wanted just to add one thing, that like the text that we're showing in the installation, which is about like using the concept of ghosting and applying it to platforms that are mediating relationships, mediating work relationships, and that you can be ghosted now by a platform and you're just gone, you don't exist anymore in that thing. And to talk about this, we work with text that we found, so we didn't write it ourselves. But here we also made this decision to, initially we thought about showing actual people, but then thought, okay, maybe let's just go for text and keep it more abstract and not use these bodies as like this, I don't know, spectacle that you can look at and it's maybe exotic or strange or whatever, but to bring it down to this textual level and leave some stuff open.
Yeah, I mean, this situation with the ghosting is really a great example of how the power is shifting toward the employers and away from the workers in a way. And I think that is, from that situation, one question that is really important that is arising is what channels do employees have to influence their working conditions? Do they have a capacity at all to leverage influence about their terms of employment in present situation? What do you think about it?
Yeah, who goes first? Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I say something about this. Let's say these two notions of like employer-employee. I think what's very present, at least in my let's say perception, is the fact that those two categories are not monolithic. In the sense that very often, both also in our work, as Sebastian was saying, we are the people who let's say commission work. We ask other people maybe to help us out with a certain aspect, but sometimes we are commissioned by other people. So it's very granular, the relationship, the management-managed relationship, and now, I think what is important to put out is that you can develop, of course, it's hard to speak on a general level, but surely you can sort of try to develop your own set of best practices. I wouldn't say an ethics for yourself, but like a way to deal with another workforce that the day after might be represented by you. So I guess that is also a form of solidarity. I mean, now again, like a word that I use in a very shy way. It's not like my terminology. It's not the words I belong to me, to my story. But I think that in this kind of developing a set of modes of operation, or mode of collaboration, mode of management that are somehow respectful and keeps like certain boundaries alive, you create a sort of little space for emancipation and let's say healthy work relationship. So, and this I'm speaking of the very basic level of artists who asks other artists to do something, or like designers who ask other designers, and musicians, and so on and so forth. So this is my reality. So this is what I can speak about.
Yeah, I would say on that level, I agree. Like if it's like working with other artists, designers, whatever. But I think if we speak more broadly about the platforms, I think there is no way that we can say you as somebody hiring somebody else through a platform should develop a certain habit or attitude of doing this, because this comes really down to the platform. And they need to be regulated and they need to be designed and so on in a way that this relationship can be productive for all the parties involved. So if you ask what can like people working there do, if you look at like the stuff that's going on outsourcing for artificial intelligence, it's often outsourced to countries that are like in really a bad situation where people will do whatever job for very little money. But once you find another country which is in an even worse situation, you move the whole system over there. So it doesn't really, it has really no connection to these people and their situation, except for they're cheap and they're willing to do it and maybe they're well educated. So I think this really comes down to like making visible the platforms and then really like asking for certain things from the platforms and like that need to be put into place. But to add one more thing, sorry.
Oh, please.
Yeah, last thing, I think with all this like internet mediated thing, there's also some chances, I would say. Let's say you are being fired from your company. This is something you put on your CV. But if you are like removed from a platform, maybe you just sign up with a second email address and you're back on. Maybe, I don't know if that is something. Or you have like next to the platform, I'm speculating, you have like a forum where you can like exchange experiences with certain people on the platform and say like, do not work with these or be careful and so on. So there's also, I would say, some chances.
Can I add something to this? I think like in this latter example, you provide really like a beautiful definition of what laborious intelligence should be. It comes to mind the book that looks at this idea of ghost work, in which like the laborious intelligence is that of the worker that next to their job create forums, create like best practices, tips and tricks to to stay afloat in the platform economy. And what happens next? That the platform appropriates this work for free, which becomes like the internal forum. So again, I don't want to be cynical, but the process, and this has been since like the inception of industrial revolution, the sense that a certain savoir-faire, a know-how of the workforce is regularly reincorporated in the platform for profit. I mean, that's how it works, without proper remuneration, without the engineering work, the remuneration for social moderating and engineering work of keeping these communities together. That is where I really see the laborious intelligence.
Yeah. So the platforms should hire their own platform workers to improve the platform and build the platform.
That's what they suggest. That's what the author of the book suggests. They should take care into consideration the workers that know better, basically, because they work there. As simple as that.
Yeah.
But see, Silvio, in your text, you are mentioning certain, how to say, initiatives of the tech workers to unionize in a way and to create organization that will kind of trying to improve working conditions. How is this related to the kind of course, you just said that in the different worlds, let's say in the artistic world, it's a different, and it's, I don't know, just with the platforms that are moving from the one poor country to another. I mean, this is kind of different situations. But what we're observing now, it's kind of really attempts of the workers to organize in order to improve their working conditions. So, So what I would say, there is a need for that, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I in the text I mentioned 3 initiatives, and those initiatives I follow from a distance with interest and admiration. And they are like the Tech Workers Coalition, Cultural Workers Unite, which is a Rotterdam-based, so it's very close to my context, and Art Workers Italia. So they are active in different contexts. So the one is tech workers in general. The second is cultural workers, and the third is art workers. So what connects these 3 initiatives is the fact that they break this distinction system that the art world has traditionally produced. So they go towards indistinction. So the Tech Workers Coalition says, for example, it doesn't matter if you work in the cafeteria or in the engineering department, you're still a tech worker because you contribute to the tech industry in a way or another. So it keeps every kind of labor involved in that. Same thing does Cultural Workers Unite and Art Workers. They say also the graphic designer that makes the poster for the exhibition is a cultural worker or an art worker. So in the text, they are these initiatives are a way to show that in activist terms, for the goals of activism, indistinction is a more feasible strategy. And art has a limitation in the sense, has some shortcomings. Art, I mean, like in its traditional mode of creating an artwork and installing it an exhibition space and so on and so forth. It has other qualities, but maybe not the activist one, so to speak.
Yeah, before we go further, I would just like to remind people that they could leave their comments and questions on a chat on Aksioma website. What I want to also ask you about this discourse which was following the introduction of the gig economy, discourse that was kind of highlighting the benefits for the gig, and especially kind of emphasizing this autonomous nature and of such a work. And this is a kind of we can say a certain ideology that was kind of embedded in this gig work. And do you think that this ideology is still functional and is still in place? And I'm sure that is in a different context, is differently present and kind of indifferently expressed. But especially in the West, do you think that anybody still believes in that?
In the gig economy.
Yeah, and this whole discourse about the autonomous nature of that such a work, flexibility, how can you benefit as a worker from that?
Are you asking both, I suppose?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Well,
Sebastian,
if you want to go, no, please.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think it would be hard to find many people who still believe this, aside from people who are setting up such platforms. I would say there's very few people who join the gig economy and say, this is it. And finally it is here and I can be part of it. But this is more of an assumption. So I still believe also in some promises that I would want to have, like this total flexibility, autonomy, and so on. But I think by now it's quite clear it's not being delivered. As we also spoke before, platforms not doing anything to improve themselves. It's just not happening. But if you want to answer, Silvio, go ahead. But I would also have a question if you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Go with the question. Then, maybe I think it. Yeah.
No, but you can answer first, and then I have, because the question is shifting it a bit back to your text.
Okay, but then I'm gonna just drop it very quickly. I mean, the way I started to see this. So I think like basically gig economy platforms and capitalism in general has tapped into like a demand that is typical of liberal democracies, which is the one for autonomy, for self-determination. So it bought into this rhetoric. It was smart to do so. But if we take, like, for example, the field of gig economy platforms, like, for example, food delivery, we see a paradoxical situation happening that shows how much, to what extent, autonomy as defined by the platform is like what I started to call photonomy, based on another term, which is photomation, fake automation, so fake autonomy. So a lot of riders started to protest in order to be not contracted workers, so autonomous worker, but to be employees, so to be subservient to the company. So there is a layer which is, let's say, has to do with the system of value that is ours, is Western, and so on and so forth. And then there is another value, a system of value, which is legislative. So it's from the clash of these two system of values, these two systems, that an idea of freedom which is sort of negative. It's a negative freedom, like to be autonomous from other things comes to the fore. So it's just like a scramble of terminology that confuses the thing. So to speak of autonomy as a platform speak, it doesn't mean to speak as autonomy as a form of self-determination. So the biggest achievement, I think, of platforms was to sort of create a sort of fuzziness around certain terms that were valuable. I honestly believe that autonomy is the value to achieve and to strive for, but not in that sense.
Yeah. So they confused the term. I mean, insert different meetings in the same term. Yeah. Sebastian, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to maybe circle a bit back to Silvio's essay. Because to me, the question would be, so far we have talked about like the labor relationships, and specifically, Silvio, you talked about like among artists or between artists and somebody manufacturing something or writing the press release and so on. And to me, the question would be, do you think that, you know, like art should strive for something pure, morally good, do it the right way and be an example because it has like this, we all talk about like artists being ahead of their time and so on, you know, artists making the world a better place, which is something I think many people hide behind, kind of like, yeah, this is art, it's good. Or is it maybe also fine to say, look, it is working with these things, making them kind of tangible, visible, but not claiming to do this in the right way, but claiming to bring it to the fore and, you know, like setting some process in motion?
This is a very hard question to answer, and also a troublesome one. Maybe what I can do is to mention like the reaction of some students when I show one of these works. Now we don't need to mention the one specific that somehow deals with this mechanism to a group of students, and they asked, yeah, but to what extent this work doesn't simply replicate the problem? You know, to what extent it just doesn't redo the thing that is anyway happening. And this is a risk that is very frequent in works that want to expose. Once they want to shed light, to simply replicate in a smaller scale a problem. So, I mean, to reflect on the ethical framework about art, I mean, what I see, for example, with these movements, with these unions, etc., is that what they do, which is ethically sound, so to speak, if you share their system of value, is without the art, without in the sense of outside their singular practice as artists. Is like something that they do on the side. So maybe I think it's useful to keep the art production as a space for a certain degree of ambiguity, and not to drop this a certain degree of, let's say, strongly ethical question, but to keep them for the art worker more than for the artist. I don't know if if this clarifies a bit. Of course, I'm struggling with this. It's not an easy question. It's very specific. So maybe I can ask you what you think, if you found a valuable answer.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're navigating these questions a lot. And to me, I struggle a lot with this. And I think I have been down that path, and I don't fully believe in it anymore, of being like, the artwork has to be pure. You have to done it like in the correct way. You have to do it yourself, and everybody has to be paid super well. And you are really like this bright example, to put it very like simple. And I think what you say, like, what does it do to move something, to isolate it and make a little thing you can look at? I think this already has a value, to make things visible, even though like not to expose it or whatever, but to really like give it a shape, an aesthetic, a name, or whatever that you can talk about or think about. So I think this already is something. But I think and I think we agree on that, one has to be kind of open about it and not say like, look, I'm just this super smart artist, and not mention the like in your production what's going on. I think this is a separate thing, what's going on in the production. This has to be kind of like being talked about openly. But in the artwork, I don't think it has to be like pure, so to say. And for example, if I can use one example, the gallery delivery project I have, where like a courier brings an exhibition to your home. I don't feel like I'm exposing a courier and exploiting a person doing this. Instead, I think it creates a situation where people can come together and exchange and, like have a situation in a way that is maybe interesting or frustrating or something. And if I would do it myself, deliver the artworks myself, which many people have asked me to do, because it would be more pure, I think it would not be the right thing to do, because it's not about me pretending to be something or somebody, but it's about creating this situation as an artwork, as something.
Yeah. If I can add to this. Sorry.
Sure. No, please.
Well, I had the same issue. I mean, in the book, in 𝗟𝗓𝗢𝗂𝗧𝗏, I dedicate a chapter to Fiverr. And many people ask me, so why didn't you, instead of interviewing like workers, why didn't you become the worker yourself? And I also thought that it was more honest to just speak with people who really do their job and not to have like a sort of touristic view of the work. I think that both are valuable. I think my personal choice is legitimate, let's say. Also, the other one would have brought like valuable insights. But I think both are legitimate in the same way.
That's for sure. I would say, yeah, I completely agree with you. But I would just add one thing, that it's also different when we observe art world as a system, and Silvio, you are referring to Gregory Cholet's book Dark Matter, in which he is kind of saying that art world, in order to sustain, needs that dark matter. There's lots of invisible artist organizations, technicians, whatever. And this is similar, like in Victoria Alexander's book, Sociology of the Arts, when she's saying in art, winners takes all. So it's the similar kind of observation that that in order to sustain the system, you need, in a way, let's be rude and say, you need lots of losers. That's kind of, I mean, that's the reality of the art world as a system, I would say. And maybe if you want to add something, if not, I will ask Neža if we get some comments or questions on a chat before we are proceeding. So Neža, please, do we have any comments or questions in the chat?
Yes, thank you, Davor, and thank all of you for posting your questions and comments in the chat. We have selected 4 questions for the artists. And the first one is from Giga for Silvio Lorusso, related, I believe, to your essay, Gig Economy Art and its Dark Matter. And he asks, artistic production is becoming more and more submissive to platform economy principles of labor. Can art respond to that, and how?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, first of all. My essay has been more like an attempt to look at how art has responded to that. And I can list somehow the strategy, the general strategy that was like to bring these mechanism to the fore. I mean, I think the main category that Hart has used in relationship to this system has been visibility, like to make it visible. So if dark matter, as 𝗟𝗓𝗓 said before in the past, was like invisible, through the work of art, you had an attempt to, to make these dynamics visible. I think we have a better awareness now of certain dynamics. Now maybe is the turn to to turn the lens towards art production itself, also at a very low level of let's say middle class artists or like small artists that are not like the 1%, which we are all somehow in this like middle ground somehow. I think the main feature of the platform is that it creates like a distance. So every attempt to bridge the gap and show how this gap has been produced is valuable. But maybe not only through visibility, maybe there are other ways that have to deal with other mechanism of materialization of these gaps.
Yeah, thank you. I think 𝗥𝗘𝗓𝗢 will find this answer satisfactory. Our second question is from the from the user, database culture, they call themselves, and they say, do you think software extension labor is still industrial labor, or is it something else?
Tough question, Francis. So what is it? I mean, what I find, if I think about it like in terms of aesthetic, what I always imagined it and always saw it being was these, like in artworks, if we speak about how to make this visible in artworks, it was always these like people sitting at home somewhere in their like living room with a laptop and so on. And what is now happening is like these big factories in China or wherever, where people really sit there like with a proper desk and do this. And it's become like, I would say, quite complicated work to create these data sets. So I think there has been a huge shift from like very low level things that have been like outsourced to algorithms to quite complicated work, which I think is just like a proper cognitive job.
Skilled job, skilled labor.
Yeah, that's what I meant, skilled job, yeah. And so there's also nothing to feel sorry in the sense of, okay, so this stupid repetitive work, I think many of the people are really see it as a challenge and are super happy if they manage to make it really well, because it is complicated to do.
Yeah. Great. Our third question is from Dražen Dragojević, and it's quite a long one. He writes, organization, mobilization, users rather than owners of the means of production, self-employment, self-management, 𝗟𝗓𝗢𝗏𝗧, to use Silvio's umbrella term. How to organize or mobilize to make a difference or break the wheel even. How to achieve or broaden class consciousness. Even with class-conscious hive mind, how to make a difference within a formal or legal framework. A union or self-employed, self-exploited, rising against the self, prefer the blue pill or the red pill. Yeah.
Is it for both? I guess.
He slid a little Morpheus in there.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, well, thanks for this poetic question. I'd say poetic, almost a statement, I would say. Okay, class consciousness. Like, how do it's like, I have like certain doubts that let's say, class consciousness is what leads nowadays to legal frameworks that advance the condition of certain workers. I mean, class intended in the, let's say, traditional way. I think the mechanism of association between people in order to to make some demands are way more temporary. And I think we see it in already in like some of the movements that I mentioned. Is way more, let's say, less stable. The feeling part, the sense of belonging to, for example, the category of cultural work. So I guess I can only highlight a problem, and the problem is a problem of stability. Like the worker movement has had like very strong power, also because of its ability to build unions through the decades. So how do you do this in a more flexible, just-in-time way? So even unionization is somehow reflects certain platformal dynamics, I would say, of just-in-time association, and maybe that there is some potential into that, but I'm not sure, to be honest.
Well, as I see, we still have a bit of time left. I will use a question from Tomasz we just got, because it's quite an interesting one. It's a question saying, pushing work into our homes, shortening or rescheduling our 9 to 5 working time, and challenging the commodity culture. Coronavirus is changing how we think of work in general, and it showed us how structures, long perceived as immutable, can be changed overnight. After the virus is gone, will we ever go back to normal again? What do you think will be different?
Okay, so taking turns, it's probably my turn. Yeah, first of all, to some degree, I agree, yes, work has been pushed to the home, but I think work has never left the home. It's always been there, so now we sit at home doing stuff, but I mean, isn't the home a place for like work all the time, like caring for children, cleaning the house and everything? So I think these clear boundaries between 9 to 5 job and then coming home and then it's leisure time, I don't fully buy into that. And now to the question, what will remain and what will change? I can maybe say what I hope will remain and what I fear will maybe not change. I hope that, like we will be able to come together again. I can travel to somewhere and give a talk and, like have a nice time, see the audience and all this, which comes with this, like speaking somewhere. So I hope this goes away to some degree. But I really hope that for me, working from home is like as much as I hate it to some degree, like I really enjoy it as well, because I have a commute of 2 hours, which is 4 hours a day if I have to go there. So I really hope that actually work can to some degree stay at home. And I would say, like nobody knew of Zoom a year ago, and now it's everywhere, and all these platforms are like being perfected. So I think some things will stay and will get better or worse.
Can I add something to this last question, since it was a general one? I agree with a lot with what Sebastian says about, of course, the work that has always been, the house has been always the place of work. But then if it's not work that has been brought to the fore by the COVID pandemic, then what it is? What is that we see? I guess to close the circle, again, what we see has to do with management. It's management that came to the fore, and it's the failure of management and organization of the work within the household that becomes really visible. That's why I think, like, you know, the scene of the BBC journalist with the kids entering tells us so much about work. Not just because it shows work, but because it shows like how different types of work like collapse. It's a sort of explosion of types of work. So again, management, and I hope that Sebastian agrees, is this strong lens, keyword, I think, to look at labor, how it is and how it is becoming.
Yeah, if I may add a little thing to this, yes, I would say for sure, like the BBC guy's kid would have been in kindergarten or in school usually, but from my own experience, working at home really is like kids running into your room, sitting on your lap while you're trying to write an email, hoping they won't delete the email or send it before you're done. So maybe the change here is really like this becoming visible and for everybody to see through the camera that is like omnipresent now at home through Zoom and whatever.
Yeah, thanks to you both. I think for as far as the questions go, this might be a good place to finish. So back to you, Davor, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Neža. And I mean, this is a very interesting, just that you mentioned, Silvio, this organizational aspect that is coming from management, kind of managing the processes and people that is coming forth. And I would say that this is also for me most interesting aspect of the whole crisis. Not only how it's related to organizing the work, but also how deals with the whole this crisis. This is a really, I would say, very important aspect. And before the closing, I would like to ask you if you have any kind of closing remarks about the topic that we just kind of discussed and went through different aspects of the topic of labor and platforms.
Do you have one, Silvio?
If there is.
I think, yeah, I tried. My sort of management final bit was some sort of final
closing. Yeah,
for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then thank you, both of you, and we will give a word to our host, 𝗟𝗯ance.
Thank you, Davor. I actually like to thank all of you, Silvio, Sebastian, the online audience, for sharing with us your thoughts, your valuable contributions and your questions. And at the same time, I would like to take the chance to invite you all to attend the second and last streaming event related to our year-long program, Hyperemployment. On Monday, 7 December 2020 at 5 p.m. Central European Time, the artist duo 𝗦𝗲𝗯𝗀𝗃𝗍𝗀 and the professor of digital culture and network theories Felix Talder will discuss topics such as the invisibility of institutional processes, the functioning of infrastructures and logistics, and freedom and control in the data economy. This informal conversation will partly trace the one that we are about to publish in Hyperemployment, Post-Work, Online Labor, and Automation, the reader that will be released very soon by Nero Editions. If you're interested in what we do, I invite you to visit our website, keep an eye on our YouTube and Vimeo channels, and follow us on social media. That's all, folks. Thanks for being with us today. Na svidenje.